Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Julia. I will be doing just a little book haul of the books that I read in July. I'm usually like not the biggest reader, but I've been getting more into reading. I've had more time now, and just in general, like I'm trying to figure out what kind of genres I'm really interested in. So far, I've realized that I really like contemporary literature, specifically fiction. I haven't read enough of these types of books, but thrillers are kind of like something that I'm really interested in. I do like contemporary fiction that includes like romance in it, but I'm not sure if I really am like the biggest romance, like full-on romance genre, where there's only like the plot line of romance. I really enjoy having other things going on. It's interesting because I always watch this YouTuber and she's really into romance books because she really likes like fluffy books and just like where you can escape to and just like be happy. But I really like books that are more realistic than that. It would be nice to escape into a book, but it just feels like it's not real. There's more to life than just fluffiness, so I want to read about that because I like listening to other people's stories about their experiences in life. And you know, obviously it doesn't have to be real or anything, but it has to kind of make me feel something, if that makes sense. Anyways, so I right now have an app called Storygraph. It's right next to my Letterboxd app. And this app just keeps record of all the books that I've read, and it's like a review basically. And I've read 9 books in July. So I'm gonna start off with talking about how I felt about those books, if I think they're worth buying, and just in general like my overall review of the book itself. So the first book that I started off in the beginning of July, let's see, I finished this book really early on. I finished it on July 2nd. So basically I probably started it the ends of June, but it was a really fast read. It was Tuesdays with Morrie. This is by Mitch Albom, who's a pretty famous author. He also was the author of The 7 People You Meet in Heaven. It's basically about a student and his relationship with his professor. And I think that this is a really nice read to somebody who kind of wants to learn more lessons about life. If you're kind of looking for, it's not necessarily a self-help book, but it's kind of sort of gearing towards like, these are the things that are important in life. The author himself, I think he is religious, so he touches on like points about forgiveness and just like loving one another, very much like biblical religious aspects of life, but also just he touches on like mentorship and just really appreciating the people that you have in life to kind of guide you along throughout their lives. I rated this one a 3.5 out of 5, which is not bad. My 3.5 or just like 3 in general reviews are essentially that it was like mid. 3.5 is probably like a little bit above mid, but I thought it had a really cute message. I think it had a lot of like important lessons, obviously, that he'd learned, but I couldn't necessarily relate to the story, which I'm not biased over the fact that I couldn't relate. I just pinpointed that as an aspect where, since they're both like towards the male gaze, I guess, there were some things that I couldn't necessarily put myself in their shoes, but it was really interesting otherwise. I loved that he had this really strong relationship with his professor, and you know, years later he was visiting him in the hospital and things. Like, it was very loving and endearing message, just being there for other people. So yeah, that's kind of what I felt about this book. Overall, yeah, it was a 3.5. Pretty good, not bad. I'd probably read it again, honestly. I wouldn't mind reading it again, but not anytime soon. The next book that I read that I don't have a physical copy of, but I will put it right here, is Good Material by Dolly Alderton. Honestly, this book was very, very overhyped on the book talk community. I'm not even on TikTok, but I know. I think this book had a lot of good potential to it. This book felt like I was kind of reading a diary, essentially, and it was kind of repetitive about how he's saddened over the breakup and how he's trying to cope over the breakup. The main character, he's going through a breakup. He was trying to understand why the relationship ended, and I just felt like it was very repetitive. I also like that her perspective was included towards the end, but I think that it would have been more beneficial to have more of her perspective in the book. I know that it's about him, but I think that it overall wrapped up what the relationship basically was to them, and it made you realize, oh yeah, they're not actually a perfect fit for each other. Yeah, the ending was really sad. It did make it pretty hopeful that even when things end, one day you will be okay. So I did really like that message. I gave it a 3.0 out of 5 just because I felt like I was gonna gain more out of it. I mean, a lot of the things were just like, we'll end up being okay, it's just like, give it time, and these are kind of things that I already knew about, like how you deal with breakups, so I felt like didn't really give me much. But the next book I ended up reading was Love in Other Words. This book goes between future self and past self of our character Macy, and she is going to get married to her fiance, but her high school sweetheart comes back. The book really pushes that they're soulmates, you know, like since it plays with time, it goes back to showing us like what happened then, you know, like then this happened, and then it goes to the now, like now what's going on. But I don't know, like usually I feel like I would have loved this book. The way that Elliot was written, he just kind of gave me the ick. Like I don't know what it was about Elliot. I think it was just the fact that like he was so desperate to be with Macy, like after years had passed. And I get that the book is trying to push that they're soulmates, that they have always loved each other and cared about each other, but then there's this one event that happened that is the reason why they didn't stay together. I feel like Elliot is not the book boyfriend that I imagined that was going to be like the one. And that was very disappointing because I love rooting for the main character, and like having an ex-lover come back is such a like good plot line that I wish that Elliot had been different. I just didn't really enjoy him. I didn't like his character. Macy was a pretty good character. I also think she was just so indecisive about her decisions that she just kind of let whatever happened to her happen. I rated Love in Other Words a 3 out of 5 stars. And I guess I'm realizing that I'm rating a lot of these 3 out of 5 stars. This book has been on my TBR since literally the pandemic, and I was like, yes, I'm gonna come around to reading this book, and then I never did. And one of the reasons why is because I just felt like I wasn't ready yet, because during the pandemic I was super depressed as was everybody. I just felt like reading a really, really sad book was just going to put me in a worse mental health space. So I was like, you know what, I think I'm gonna hold off. But it is an important read that I wanted to read, so I was waiting for a time that like I would be able to kind of be ready for this book, and that was this year. Know My Name, if you don't know, is a nonfiction book, memoir about Channel Miller's experience as a sexual assault survivor from the Sanford case. Such a beautiful story. The way that she wrote everything was just like so disheartening. Like it made my heart just like drop every time I would be reading it, because it shows really the reality of a woman's experience in the world and women go through in order for people to even believe in women. You know, most of the time going through a case, the judge never really favors the women. In particular, this was like a really big case, and she just kind of shows her point of view of the whole experience. And then towards the end, she has her victim impact statement here. Emily Doe, which is like her alias name. This statement is actually one of the most incredibly, like, this whole book is just written in perfection. Like, I cannot fathom how much I love this book. It's the most incredible read. I think every single person should read this book. It's so informative, and just her story, you know, ultimately it's about her story, and I think it should be heard by the whole world. I gave it a 5 out of 5. This book deserves a 5 out of 5 stars because it's just so incredible. And this book made me cry several times. The 5th book that I read that I do not have the copy of, but it is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. So the book follows our main protagonist, Emma, and she's a traveling nurse. She spends every 6 weeks in a new location, and just like one of those books that it's just like, it's a feel-good book because you kind of know what's gonna happen, but you also don't know necessarily what's gonna happen. What I really liked about Emma's character, which a lot of people really like about this, is that she's a very strong-headed character. Justin is more like, oh, like, I really want to be with you, and Emma's like, no. She's pushing him away. But then there's other issues. But anyways, I ended up giving that book a 4.25 out of 5 stars. I thought it was pretty good. I think Justin is my book boyfriend for sure. He was so sweet, so cute in the book. It was a very predictable book, but honestly, it was a feel-good. So the next book that I read was Never Let Me Go by Kazu Ishiguro. Never Let Me Go basically follows 3 characters, but more so one character, Kathy, and her friend Ruth and Tommy. She goes to a boarding school, and a lot of things happen, and they're trying to figure out like what's going on. Essentially, they are made for a purpose, and they're promised something. And I don't want to spoil anything, but yeah, you kind of discover like who they are and what they do. And she's kind of just reminiscing on like her time at this boarding school and the people that were in it. I honestly think that this book was quite literally so amazing. Like, I would definitely read this book over and over. I gave this book a 4.5 out of 5. It's very dystopian, but it's also very heartfelt. Overall, a really good book. The next book that I read is Big Swiss by Jen Beagin. So Big Swiss basically follows Greta, and she's an audio transcriber for a sex therapist in the US. And she's particularly interested in one of the patients, and her nickname is Big Swiss. And it's very hypersexual, which I don't know if that's necessarily my style of like reading. Was thought-provoking though, and kind of psychologically driven. You get to see like how their dynamic and relationship unfolds over time. I think the end kind of made me not like it as much because I felt like everything that was kind of said from the beginning kind of tossed aside, and there could be a reason for that. I think it had more psychological factors to it, which I tend to really enjoy those types of books, but I don't know, I just think just wasn't my type of book. I didn't really like feel connected to the characters at all. So yeah, I gave that a 3 star out of 5, which honestly I'm thinking about it now and I'm like, maybe it would be even less because I really just didn't feel connected at all to the characters. But I don't know. I'll stick with the 3 that I gave it because that's my immediate reaction of the book. Okay, and then the next one is the second to last book that I read in July. And that one I also do not have a physical copy of, but I will put it right here. It is Funny Story by Emily Henry. What can I say? A lot of people really love Emily Henry, and I've heard mixed reviews of this author, and this is the first book that I've read of this author, so I couldn't really tell you whether, you know, I like her writing style or not. Okay, hello again. Sorry, my camera died, so it's my phone camera now. But the premise of the book is that Daphne and Miles start fake dating because Peter, who was Daphne's ex-fiance, says like, oh, I don't have feelings, but then he like runs off with his best friend, Petra, and then Petra's fiance or whatever, boyfriend, who's Miles, she dumps him, and then Peter dumps her, so then they start dating. And then, I'm not sure if I'm explaining this correctly, but basically the pairing, they start dating each other, and then Daphne and Miles start dating, but they start fake dating, you know, just to make the other couple jealous. Like, the more I think about this premise, I'm like, it's kind of stupid, but it's basically like a trope, you know, like make them jealous, but then essentially they end up falling in love, because of course this is what the funny story is about. I gave it a 4 out of 5 only because it was a stupid trope, but it's one of the tropes that I really like. I like when they fake date. I like when they just pretend to fall in love and then actually fall in love. Like, it's one of those feel-good type of stories, kind of like Abby Jimenez is Just for the Summer, and fluffy and cute, and it's just like a meet cute story. I suppose it was not funny, as the title says, funny story. It was not funny, but it was a meet cute, so it gave me that at least. And then the last book that I read that I will be reviewing is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. I started reading this because my friend actually recommended it to me, but I had heard about this book before. I had been waiting to read it, but when I read it, a little bit of it, while we were in LA, I was like, you know what, I have to buy my own copy and read the book, and I finally got to reading it in July. Him describing everything that he wants her to know about like his treatment. You know, it really delves into like his traumas and his relationship with his mother, a very tumultuous relationship. And honestly, it just like, this book, first of all, look at the cover. Look at how gorgeous this cover is, okay? I just want to appreciate. I know you shouldn't judge books by their covers, but anyways, he's also a poet, so his style of writing is just so poetic. Like, it's so gorgeous. That is my type of book. It is my favorite types of books. When you're literally elaborating on every single feeling, like every sense, like your touch, your smell, your taste. I just like, I feel like I'm transported right exactly where you want me to be. And this book is literally that. So if that's your type of book, please pick this book up. Please read it. I promise you will not regret it. It's my favorite book out of all the books that I read this month. And honestly, like, it's up there. It's up there. It's like probably one of my favorite books of all time at this point. That is my review of all these books. Sorry I had to finish on my phone camera, but that's just how it ended up being. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed my review and just enjoyed getting to know these books further. If you're thinking about reading any of these, those are my recommendations. Oh, by the way, this book is a 5 out of 5, if you didn't know. I literally was bragging about it, like as if I wrote it myself. But yeah, thank you so much for joining. I will be trying to make more videos like these and continue on with the months. Bye.